Hey there, I'm Dave, the Notion coach, and in this video, we're going to be creating an inbox dashboard in Notion. If we think of inbox, we're probably thinking about email and the overflow of messages, responses, etc. In this case, we're going a little bit differently and focusing instead on three key areas: actions, which are tasks to do, as well as notes and links. So these three areas, having a space and having a dashboard to quickly capture and be able to refer back to later, whether you're doing it in a weekly review or monthly review, and really having a space to capture information that is going to be useful or helpful in the future. So that's what we're focusing on today. We're going to look at the things that we probably need and the three key databases that you would need to set up a dashboard like this if you're not using a tool like Manifest, and some of the things to consider to personalize this inbox dashboard to really suit your needs. So that's what we're getting into today. Before we jump in, I want to give a quick update. I'm in the process of launching the third volume of Manifest OS, the Creator's Workspace, and this is really applying a lot of Notion's big features that have come out over the past several months. Looking at things like pulling in different databases into the same view or having more control over how pages and databases work in general. So very excited about this one, really just applying everything from the past 2.5 years in this template. So one quick note on Manifest OS, the big difference between this one and the previous versions is we're starting to look at specific dashboards that are parallel to methodologies like the para method or getting things done or bullet journaling, really just accounting for these different frameworks that are very important to huge communities that are also getting up and running with Notion. So if you're curious or if you want to stay up to date on the process and get some behind the scenes as to what goes into creating a creator's workspace, sign up using that link in the description below. And there's also going to be an exclusive community for Manifest users. And this is really just a space to share questions, comments, feedback in one place and really get the most out of Workspace. So very excited about this. This is an entirely new territory for me personally, but this is something that we've been testing out over the past couple months and very excited to launch later this year. Okay, so inbox. As I mentioned, there's three key databases that we're going to need to create this inbox dashboard. So we're going to quickly go through each of these databases and break down some of the key properties you'd probably want to apply if you're building this yourself, and use that to set up the dashboard, which is actually not that complicated once you've got those databases set up. If you know me, you know I'm a fanatic over databases, just being able to connect and tie different pieces of information or being able to organize information in different ways. So we're going to take a look at how that works. So the first one is the notes database. So if we take a look at this particular notes database, this is functioning as a combination of an atomic journal, of a space to capture ideas, notes, reference materials if we want to go back into at a later date. But if we go into an example note, just to get a sense of what's happening, this is an idea for an Instagram post, and there's a quick overview, so a snapshot of what the particular idea is about. Type, if we want to give it a type, so this would be a note, for example. There's ways to set up templates so that we're not having to track all of these properties or add them manually, but probably for a separate video. And then we've got some properties like when it was created, when it was last edited, just as added context when we're going back into these particular archive. This is just for things that are not really relevant anymore, but you want to keep as part of your workspace for potential reuse later in the future. And then we've got a lot of relations here that are not quite related to the inbox, but this is just to get a sense of having one database such as notes and being able to capture notes related to particular days. So for the daily journal, those are categorized per day. If we're setting intentions for projects, we would connect that to the project, and the notes database would live inside of that project. So again, the more we start to connect these databases together, the less we have to navigate throughout our workspace. So if we just take a look at some recent notes, a lot of this is daily journaling, but we've got ideas around Notion templates, around social media posts, things like that. So that's the notes database. The key property that we're going to be using is tagging it as a note. And if we go into the notebook, so let's go back into the home and we go to notebook, notes are essentially organized into notebooks. So if we take a look at each of these, this is just a handful of notebooks for reference, but we have one here called Inbox. And this is the notebook. This is how we're filtering notes to be able to quickly capture ideas and then sort them out, give them additional properties in the future. But each of these notebooks has a linked view of the notes database that's already filtered. So this is using a template. So this is just kind of ideas that I've jotted down over the past, say, couple days or so, and then probably on a weekly basis, go back in and maybe some ideas are related to projects, or maybe they're related to different areas or things like that we want to kind of add some more context to. But most importantly, we want to move notes from the inbox to a particular notebook. So we have some examples here like a journal, ideas for YouTube videos, ideas for Notion templates. You get the idea. So that's a quick overview on notes. Now let's take a look at the next database, which is actions. We can think of actions as a combination of tasks. In this case, we're also tracking events, meetings, other key deliverables. Essentially, any key information related to projects live inside of the actions database. So if we pop into this database, this is just looking at a filtered view of only social media related tasks. We can see here there's primarily a due date, but let's open up one of these actions to see what's happening here. So most importantly, actions are related to and live under a project. So if we see that arrow to the top right, that indicates that we're looking at a related database. And in this case, this is related to a Create OKR's social media series of posts. But other key properties that we're tracking for actions are the due date, time estimate, which has been super helpful to in terms of weekly review, seeing where time went across multiple projects and, campaigns, initiatives, things like that. Tag, this is also optional, but could be helpful if you're filtering by specific types of actions. And then the status, which is the updated status property, which allows us to see status as either a property, so in progress, completed, or done, or as a simple checkbox. So that was a pretty welcome update. And then from here, there's optional template setup. In this case, we're just looking at visual cues to say if we're color coding types of actions or types of projects. This could be helpful to get a sense of what actions are happening throughout the course of the day or the week. So in the context of an inbox, the main thing that we're going to look at is applying inbox actions to a general tasks database or project. And that way we could always refer back to it and move these actions to the right project, whether that's in a weekly review or if you have a scheduled time that you're processing your inbox. So the next area that we're going to look at is the links database. This is actually tied to a larger library that organizes everything from book highlights to podcast notes to articles, tweets, things like that. This is very closely integrated with a tool called Readwise. So if you haven't checked that out, it's definitely worth looking into, especially if you're finding or looking for a solution to organize knowledge, highlights, notes around things that you're consuming. So if we go into the library database, we can see here this is pulling in a lot of resources, whether they're, categorized as books, articles, tweets, podcasts. But if we go into the inbox, this is also a space to quickly capture articles, content, videos that you haven't reviewed yet but want to save in your library for review at a later date. So the only key difference between inbox pages or documents versus everything else in the library is it's got a checkbox where it says if this is part of the inbox. So as you're doing a weekly review, if you're going through your inbox of the library, we are reviewing or consuming that content and then unchecking from the inbox property. So those are the key 3 databases that we're using, and that gives us a space to then get to these 3 toggles. And we're going to talk about not only how to create the views for each of these databases, but some nifty features that we can use, especially if you're using a tablet or the mobile app, to make it easier to navigate. So let's get into that next. Before we get into build mode, want to take a look at what the inbox dashboard might look like once it's up and running, to get some ideas on not only how you can set it up, but how you can personalize it. So if we go into the manifest inbox, we've got these three sections: actions, notes, and links. So if we go into actions, this is pretty sparse. Only thing that we're tracking here is the name of the task and whether it's completed. So if I'm opening this up, throughout the week and quickly knocking these out and they're not really connected to a project yet, that's totally fine. It kind of saves us some steps. But anything that you do want to track or refer back to in the future probably makes sense to relate it to a particular project. So if we go into here, the only filters that we have for this particular view of the actions, there are three. So one, they are applied to general tasks by default. So all of these are connected to a project. The next one is they're not started. And the last one is the tag that we're setting up is it's set to inbox. So that just allows us to filter these. And as we go through these, say at the end of the week, we can update these, change the project. If we complete the task, we can mark that as done and essentially move them out of it. If we jump to notes, this is just organized by if the archive property is checked or not. So again, this is looking at things that coming across to refer back to. In some cases, blurb for a website. The inbox notebook is applied by default. So let's take a look at the filter here. We can see that created date is descending, so the most recent comes up first, and then archive is unchecked, and then by default the notebook is the inbox. So we definitely want to update whether a note is for social media ideas. We want to move it to that notebook. And the type of notes, again, the notes database encompasses everything from ideas to journal entries, so we want to make sure we tag these as notes. And the last one, links. This is, anything from podcasts to articles to websites to YouTube videos. I made a video on creating a web bookmarks page in Notion, and that's really applying a lot of the same methods if you used Save to Notion, which is a browser extension, or Notion's native web clipper. These are great tools to quickly capture websites and be able to refer back to, and you can customize it to save items to a specific database, in this case, your library. So those are the three key views. What we're gonna do is build this from scratch, set these up, and take a look at how we can create our personalized inbox dashboard. 3, 2, all right, so we're in our home page, and to get a sense of where these pages are located, because they're different from the original databases, these we can consider as dashboards that we want to have the quickest access to on a daily basis. But if we go down here into menu, this is where these dashboards are going to live. So we've got planner, inbox, actions, projects, areas, and resources, but we want to create a new one from scratch. So going to create a new page. We're going to call this inbox 2.0, and we're going to drag this over to the sidebar here. And what I'm going to do next, even though it's not set up yet, I'm going to copy the link to this page, and we're going to give some space from this last page, press paste, mention that page. And if you noticed, we've got that red border. That means that this is a synced block, which means that if I'm navigating across my highest level dashboards, we can create a synced block as essentially a navigation bar or navigation menu. So that makes it a lot easier. And as you update this or you customize your key pages, it'll update automatically. The magic of having a synced block. So we've got this inbox here, and we're going to start this from scratch. So a couple things we want to do is we're going to go ahead and make this full width, and we're going to apply an icon, funny starter icon. Hopefully we don't treat it as a toilet, but let's look for an icon. Let's use one of these. And next I'm going to connect that synced block. So I'm going to go back to the home page. We're going to go to this menu, copy link to block, and in here we're just going to press Control or Command V, paste and sync, and we've got our navigation there. So next steps are we're going to set up our 3 areas. So we're going to start with make this a toggle heading 2. We'll call this actions, and then if we press Control Command D, we can just quickly duplicate these. So we'll do the next one, which is notes and links. So from here, next step is going to be linking those databases into this space. So if we type linked view of database, we want to decide what database to show. This is also one of the more recent updates in terms of being able to show different databases in the same view. So in this case, we want to select actions, and I want to see, let's go to this one, which is all, but this is showing all of our tasks. So we want to filter this a bit more granular, which we're going to do now. The filter, we're going to make some updates here. We do want to keep due date descending, so the more recent comes up first. But for filters, let's go ahead and delete this. Actually, let's add a few more before we delete it, because we've got some client stuff in there that we don't want to show. So first, we're going to say status is not started. And then we're going to say project is related to general tasks. And let's go ahead and delete this previous one, which was only filtering by social media related tasks. So the next thing we want to do is change the view. So here you can, it's up to you in terms of either using a gallery or, probably don't want a timeline, but one of the things that we probably want to do is turn off the preview so that we can see more actions in the same view. So we've got that set up. And the next thing is, let's get rid of this empty filter. So we've got the filtering and sorting set up. And now if you want to turn on any particular properties like a status, so if we want to say turn that on, you'll see here you have the option to show either not started or the updated checkbox. So if I go back into properties and I click on this menu for status, now you can change this to a simple checkbox, and checking the box will just move that task to completed or to done, whatever you call your completed property. So we've got that set up. Again, this is only filtering actions that are in general tasks that are not started and are descending. So the more recent are coming up first. So again, a couple quick steps, but now we've got our inbox for tasks. And one quick addition. So let's say we're on the mobile app and you don't want to scroll and toggle past these. If we go into the menu and copy link to view, and let's highlight this text and we press Control or Command V. And now what that's going to do is make this clickable. So if I just want to open this up on the app, it's going to open only to this view of actions. So super helpful if you've got a dashboard that you have a lot of different databases on and you don't want to scroll or kind of navigate past lots of information. Could be a good shortcut. Shout out to Thomas Frank, who I think originally posted this and had the idea, but genius idea and definitely something I use a lot of places in the workspace. Okay, so next up we're doing notes. So if we go into notes, same process, we're gonna go linked view of database, and we're gonna go to the notes database, make sure we got the right one. So a couple filters that we want to set up are the type. So if we have a property that you're organizing types of notes that you have, having one for notes or ideas, whatever we call that, we'll filter to only show those. And then in here, a couple things we have set up. The related database, we want to make sure that this is organized in our inbox notebook. And if we go into, let's see, other properties that we have here, I think those are the only two that we need to filter by. So it's a note, it's in our inbox, and then we want to sort by date is descending. So again, the same thing comes up. Oh, one more that I think we had set up before was archive was unchecked. So there we go. So we've got that set up. And again, if we want to do that little shortcut where we copy the link to this particular database and paste it in here, now that opens up this view directly on its own page. Also, if you want to favorite it, favoriting this page and maybe using the favorites as a key navigation could also be helpful, so that you don't have to necessarily have these on the same page. Last one is we're going to, again, go to linked view of database, going to our library. So first thing we want to do is set up our first filter. and we're going to set this as inbox is checked. So what that's doing is anything that's added to this particular view of the library database will automatically be logged as an inbox resource or page or link. So if we're doing a weekly review and you want to see what's in my inbox that hasn't been organized or hasn't been maybe reviewed or summarized, that's just a quick little checkbox or property to be able to distinguish between what's in your inbox and what's in your library that's already been reviewed or consumed. So this, in this case, if we were going through that process, let's say we did complete listening to this podcast and we had some notes on it, you can see here, again, if you're using Readwise and you're creating like little snippets, it will automatically save these, which is pretty awesome. But once we have reviewed some content, we can just unclick this inbox and that's removed from this view. So it's really just a strategy to make sure that these three views don't get filled up or overflowing with content, because in that case, it's going to get overwhelming to go in and review and clean up or identify what's actionable, and then we're not quite getting as much use out of it. So last step we're going to do here is just create a copy link to view, and you can also click on the link button in the menu and paste the link we have here. So that puts it on its own page. And we've got our inbox dashboard. So a couple things to keep in mind here. We might do a 2.0 on this in terms of once you've got an inbox dashboard set up, what does a weekly review look like in terms of processing or organizing this information and making sure that nothing like big ideas get lost or no big to-dos get lost, and really just making sure that not only can we capture information, but we could act on that information and have that be a key part of our workflow. So let me know if you're interested in seeing that video. I might move that up in the calendar of YouTube videos, but otherwise, hope that's helpful. Again, if you're curious about Manifest OS and the most recent version that's going to be coming out later this year, definitely sign up to get notified using that link in the description below. And otherwise, if you're creating your inbox and you're going in a slightly different direction, definitely let me know what it's looking like. If you've got questions about how we set it up in this video, or how to use things like filtering, sorting, and I want to make sure that we tackle those questions in the comments. But otherwise, see you in the next video.